Well, hello there, and welcome to World Breach Report number 26. I'm Sean from Sean Hunts Monsters, and thank you so much for tuning into a program where we discuss the files that can help you escape the cage that imprisons your mind. Thanks and gratitude for everyone who has shared, liked, and subscribed to the channel, where we're just basically making common sense statements about things we know to be true, about the paranormal, outworld entities, and generally the world which is shaping around us. Because it's getting kind of crazy out there. I don't know if you've noticed, but the forces of darkness are definitely trying to pull the wool over your eyes. Let's get into it, shall we? We got a bunch of stuff we need to discuss. Last week we talked about some steps I was taking to commence in the living on purpose. We'll be following up on that next week. This week, we're going to touch on the things that you showed up for, which is, of course, the absolute madness which is engaging our reality. Now, people have been saying for quite some time that they think this is UFO phenomenon. You know, well, they're aliens, they're aliens, they're aliens. And now, as I just, I never really get sick of being right. Now everyone's coming forward saying they're interdimensional beings, outworld entities, as I like to call them, or as they're more classically known, demons. Which, I don't really like the word demons because it kind of adheres to like a certain people of the book mindset. I'm just saying that they could be kind of some sort of quasi-interdimensional being that maybe doesn't have our best interests at heart. Do demons fit that description? Yeah, probably. But calling them that kind of works, works me over a bit. But let's get into some of the stories that back that play. Wouldn't you know it? UFO Files came out and said mysterious creatures or interdimensional beings. The next set of UFO files that will be released by the Pentagon will carry major revelations that will align with dark biblical prophecies. Pastors who claim they were part of secret meetings have said the first set, 162 files, mentioned encounters with strange creatures and anomalies in the skies that were released. Passive Joseph Zuptes, the evangelist Tony Merkel, told the Daily Mail that intelligence insiders and former military personnel gathered them in Tennessee in February. We talked about this then, to propose the idea that mysterious objects seen over the decades could be interdimensional beings. What? Whoa, wow, that's crazy pants. I mean, just recently they were saying, oh yeah, little green men, and that's not nuts, but now it's all coming out in the wash, where they're claiming, yes, in fact, it's interdimensional beings. Well, we kind of knew that, and to say that they're demons, I don't know if that's accurate, but I don't think they're friendly. Anything that like shows up, abducts your kids, cuts them out of your body, rapes the cat, cuts up your cows, and then leaves, not positive. Not a positive interaction. And I kind of think that the little gray dudes are probably drones, because I'm pretty sure you wouldn't want to get into the ring with the monkey. You know what I mean? Like, humans are fantastic. We're really good at being excessively violent. We're super good at that stuff. And we get super pissed off when you start cutting up our cows. So our cows, leave the cows alone, bro. Maybe that should be the new shirt. Sean Hunts Monsters, leave the cows alone, bro. Send in some, drop me a line here, see what we can do. Maybe show up in the Discord channel. We can talk about some shirt designs. That might be a neat idea. Leave the cows alone, bro. But, yeah, I don't really get why everyone's, like, still holding on that these things are, nice. Because clearly they're not nice. The abduction files that are going to be coming out now, I think that that's going to be the next thing that comes along. And this weird kind of push to push everything back into, like, a religious mindset is super strange. That's very strange to me. Because, they were worried about the aliens kind of, like, taking the people of the book and throwing them out the window. And now they're trying to, like, stuff the aliens into peoples of the book. Well, that would work if they're outworld entities, if they're interdimensional creatures, which it kind of seems like they are. I can't really think of any other reason why they try to hybridize with us. And everyone's always like, oh, they're so advanced. Oh, they're so advanced. They could wipe us out in a heartbeat if they wanted to. Yeah, I don't think they can. I don't know why they can't, but they seem to not be able to do that. The other thing they're trying to do is hybridize with us. So this leads to tell me that since they're not from this sort of dimension, they probably have to exist in this dimension. That's hard for them. So I think they're trying to hybridize with us because clearly they want something we have. Maybe it's something to do with our brains or our immortal souls, the morphic resonance field, karma. Who knows? Call it whatever you want. But one thing's for sure is we got something they want and they're hybridizing with us and they're afraid of us. 100% afraid. They use their technology to evade us. They will not engage us on one-on-one. They will not make their presence known on the planet. And they have a tendency to snipe individuals who go wandering too far into the forest. Tell me I'm wrong. Tell me I'm wrong. David Paulides has been pointing this out. We've been seeing this happen time and time again. They're catching and releasing people. They're tagging their kids. I mean, generally, these sort of issues, trust the dog. Okay, trust the dog. The dog knows what's up. And if the dog says, hey, not friendly, not a friend, listen to the dog. But don't listen to the dog, fine. How about we listen to the Chief DC Exorcist of Washington, where this was interesting. The Chief DC Exorcist finally says UFOs are likely demonic. Monsignor Stephen J. Rossetti, who serves as the chief exorcist for the Roman Catholic Archdiocese of Washington. Wow, you're doing a bang-up job, bro. Joined the growing chorus of Catholics and other Christians warning that UFOs and related phenomena are likely demonic. Now, this is the same guys who, in Washington, right, where James Elefantes, who's the owner of Ping Pong Pizza, remember that pizza joint, Pizzagate, that whole thing where they said that the guy went in and shot the place up and there wasn't a basement there? Turns out there is a basement there. Yeah, I know, kind of crazy, but there was actually a basement. Turns out James Elefantes, his name is basically French for child lover. Oh, yeah, J'aime l'enfante. Yeah, not great. My French isn't fantastic either. But yeah, Out of Shadows, good documentary. Probably check that out now with the Epstein Files, we're all seeing it. Guess what? All these dudes with their spirit cooking and weird rituals and talking to beings and hanging out roads and building temples and eating kids and doing weird things with energy kind of seems, what's the word? Evil. Yes, kind of seems evil. So, I mean, hey man, sure, thanks for coming out and saying that this is probably demonic, but, sure, all right. During a brief message posted last Friday on the YouTube page of St. Michael Center for Spiritual Renewal, better late than never, Rossetti noted that the growing national conversation about UFOs, he acknowledged that believing that life exists on other planets is theologically neutral. It's theologically neutral. There's lawful neutral, chaotic neutral, and theologically neutral. But warned that demons may represent themselves as extraterrestrials to manipulate and deceive. Or, conversely, extraterrestrials could present themselves as demons to manipulate and deceive. Not like they did it before. Our Lady of Fatima much? Hello? But there's a danger here. As an exorcist, I want to raise that danger. I wanted to raise that danger. That is that demons like to hide. They don't want us to know when they're around. They don't want us to know what they're doing because they're more effective when we don't realize it. Well, that's pretty much any evildoer. And they can kind of get into your head and manipulate things in the world to influence us to do evil. Rossetti said that Ephesians 6:12 makes it clear that humanity is engaged in warfare against spiritual forces and wickedness in high places and encourages Christians to put on the armor of God to resist them. Wear body armor. Yeah. Citing his experience as an exorcist ministering to those suffering from demonic affliction, Rossetti said that spirits can sometimes manifest in the physical realm, often as shadow men, orbs of life, or orbs of light, or even beast-like creatures. Well, it kind of sounds to me that, he's trying to fit everything into his particular nomenclature. But, hey, the major takeaway point from this is that the chief DC exorcist says that UFOs are likely demons, and he got fired for it. What? Washington priest was removed as an exorcist after linking UFOs to the work of demons. Now, this is hilarious to me because it's like, well, we didn't like what you were saying because it was untrue, says the guys talking about the invisible sky wizard. Okay, well, on what basis? Catholic Archbishop of the U.S. Capitol of Monsignor Stephen Rossetti's statements were gravely undermined the church teachings. What? At what point did the church become pro-demon or something? The Catholic Archbishop of Washington, D.C. on Wednesday removed as a well-known priest and exorcist of the Archdiocese after made public comments suggesting that UFO sightings were the works of demons. Well, that makes me really worried. Cardinal Robert McElroy said the Archdiocese, who was cutting ties with St. Michael Center of Spiritual Renewal, the Washington-based nonprofit headed by the priest Monsignor Stephen Rossetti. The Archbishop said Rossetti's statements linking UFOs to demonic presence and the center's recent use of social media gravely undermined the church's very precise teachings on the devil, demons, and exorcism. They do? Seriously, bro? They do? There's a danger here, Rossetti said in a 29 May video posted on his Facebook page. With existent surveillance, blah, 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 just recants that. Get inside your head. It is my personal belief that many of these demon UFO sightings are in fact demons, which means evil outworld entities for those playing the home game. Yeah, but of course this guy, he got shit canned and pulled out of there. You're done. No longer the Archdiocese guy. Even though we all kind of know they're interdimensional creatures. They're manifesting in interdimensional ways. But, The Church of Washington, which, I mean, come on, man. This is the home of Pizzagate. Washington's so full of demons. I mean, I wouldn't trust a priest out of Washington anyway. Like, come on, man. There's so much weird corruption going on in that place. The power games that get paid there, where, like, you know, a guy who is running a pedophile ring out of a pizza parlor is in the top 50 most powerful people in Washington. What does that tell you? What does that tell you? You know what I mean? Obviously, there's some serious darkness going on, and the kind of serious darkness that we're talking about is the kind of stuff that, you know, maybe it's understandable why someone would show up with a gun. You know, maybe that's understandable. Of course, we could ask him, but we can't because he was killed. Yeah, the guy who showed up with the gun at Pizzagate, yeah, he was killed. True story, bro. Yeah, got shot by police. Weird, hey? It's weird. But anyway, enough of that. Not only do we have problems on Earth, we have problems in space. This one really cracks me up. This is a great story. The 4 Crew 12 astronauts, NASA's Jessica Meir, Jack Hathaway, and European Space Agency Sophie Ardant, and Russian cosmonaut Andrei Fedyev, were on a 3-hour tour. As well as NASA astronaut Chris Williams received orders from Mission Control at 9:04 a.m. to don their spacesuits and enter the Crew Dragon spacecraft. This would have allowed them to depart the space station quickly in the event the leak warranted emergency evacuation. This is because they had an air leak up there. Press Secretary Bethany Stevens said the agency instructed the crew inside the Dragon spacecraft to end the safe haven procedures and return to planned operations. They called this sheltering in place, is what they called it, which I think is really funny for people on an international space station to shelter in place. Like, as opposed to what? As opposed to what? Like, what are we going to do? Go outside? We're in space, bro. We got nowhere we can go. Of course we're going to shelter in space. And, you know, the fact that our space program is so woefully neglectful is just, you know, talk about a lost leader. Talk about, like, watch the birdie. I don't know what these guys think they're trying to accomplish with this stuff. But I'm here to tell you, there's something that does not make a whole lot of sense with our space program. There's something going on the moon, the Van Allen radiation belt. We all know it's kind of there, and NASA has been lying to us for years. Why do we even listen to anything NASA says? Now the government's coming out saying, yeah, UFOs are a thing. Yeah, NASA's been doctoring photos. Oh, they haven't said that, but they're releasing footage that NASA claimed was fake for years. They're basically like cutting the guts out of NASA, which is fair. Which is fair. I mean, these guys have been lying to us for a generation, for multiple generations. And now we're just supposed to be like, oh, well, we'll just forget about that. No, nobody's forgetting shit, bro. You went and you lied to us. You made people lose their jobs, lose their livelihood. I mean, they became the laughing stocks because you guys didn't want to admit that we saw stuff on the moon. Astronauts saw stuff in space. We got pictures of stuff on the moon. Nobody wants to talk about that. Like, turns out that, you know, all the guys saying there was stuff on Mars, all the guys claiming that, you know, maybe there's life out there, these weird photos we're getting from Mars, which show some pretty crazy stuff, is now suddenly that's, I guess that's back on the table, but nobody wants to talk about that. Nope. I think, never mind protection for whistleblowers, I want some accountability, okay? Maybe that's too much. If I'm claiming that I want accountability, you know, no one's ever going to disclose anything. Well, you're going to be mad if we tell you the truth. Well, yeah, but you kind of got it coming. You know, they've been lying to us forever. So it's sort of, you know, dialed in at this point. Now, there's another thing that came forward, which is kind of interesting. Now, for those of you who are maybe aware of the TV show, The 3-Body Problem, or if you're not, you should probably read the book. It's on the CIA's recommended reading list, is The 3-Body Problem, which is an interesting story. The idea is that essentially some sort of alien species limits our ability to do technology so that they keep us in a slave state, essentially. It's pretty wild stuff. But this leads us to the Leiden Declaration. Interesting. The Leiden Declaration, endorsed by International Mathematical Union, published on June 2nd, warns that AI could undermine mathematics by flooding the field with plausible but flawed proofs, weakening attribution, shifting incentives, and giving tech companies too much influence over research priorities. Well, duh, a little late to the game there. Mathematicians should find it quite striking to teach tech companies are suddenly interested in their work, said Kevin Buzzard, a mathematician at Imperial College London, said in a statement. The Leiden Declaration is a well-thought-through response to what's currently happening. As AI continues to disrupt the space, The Leiden Declaration, which has already drawn hundreds of signatories, warns that recent AI developments are threatening the characteristic values of mathematical research, often in ways that disproportionately affect students and early career mathematicians, hence the long-term future of the discipline. Now, there's two ways you can look at this. Number one, it's kind of like the three-body problem thing, where maybe we're being limited, maybe AI's got some sinister plans. Or these are just more people that are upset that, they're not, these are the same guys who are like, well, you're all Luddites if you don't embrace technology. Oh, snap, now technology came for you. Seems like a good time to get into some trades. Certainly, you just can't sit around and play with numbers anymore. Maybe you should actually, do something, because sitting around sucking off the government tit and taking lots of cash for doing math, hey, if you can produce some results, I'm all for it. Okay, but you and I both know there's a ton of bureaucracy out there. These guys are just publishing to publish, and there's a big game where everybody's fighting for each other's funding, and it's turned into this weird, fat, disgusting mess where, it's just not really working. No one's really doing good work. Now, there are mathematicians that do good work. Let's make it clear here. I'm not poo-pooing the entire math field. Math is important. We need technology. We need to move forward. It's kind of like teachers. Everybody's had one or two teachers that were really amazing. You know what I mean? Like really good teachers. And then there's all the other teachers that kind of suck. So that's my problem, is that why is it we only have one or two exceptional teachers, where we should have one or two teachers that kind of suck and everybody else should be exceptional? That's where I'm going with this. So we need to sort of change that ratio, guys, because it's not super great. Really, it's really not. Now, I've linked to a series here, which is good math, right? This is stuff that we need to look at because things are starting to get a bit squiffy on the reality front. Mathematics keeps discovering things that shouldn't exist. The deeper mathematics goes, the stranger everything becomes. The maths you learned at school was in a world where everything had a neat solution, and mind-bending concepts like infinity were glanced over in lieu of another equation where you had to solve for x. In this marathon series, which I've linked to, we'll explore the very boundaries of maths, find out where equations falter, and where they uncover hidden truths about the universe. You learn about infinity, prime numbers, and numbers so large that it brings us to the very edge of what we can calculate. Interesting stuff. Now, of course, the entire thing came to Descartes in a dream, where he had an angel visited Descartes in a dream and said the entire world can be conquered by measure and number. Nobody likes to talk about that. So the entire scientific theory is founded by a vision of an angel. Yeah. Spoiler alert, demons are actually angels that rebelled from God. I'm according to their scripture. It's not hey man, I didn't write this stuff. I'm just saying that that's sort of, it kind of goes back, and then we're back to the three-body problem, also aliens and outworld entities. So, trust the dog. Let's get back to the dog, trusting dogs, and perhaps you should look at your tool supply to make sure there's, you have the ability to stay mobile with perhaps some sort of a vehicle, something that's good on gas, something that's maybe a motorbike, a brand. It escapes me right now, but there must be at least something you can do to take some accountability and live on purpose, because our consciousness seems to be something that these beings find really, really important. Now, I'm also a big fan of having communication that works outside of the web, where, you can sort of like ham radios, CB radios, and then I found out about a thing called Teletext. I don't know if you ever heard of this. I'd never heard of this. And believe me, I've been in this space for a while. Once upon a time in Europe, television remote controls had a magic teletext button. Years before the internet stole into homes, pressing the button brought up teletext digital information services with hundreds of constantly updated pages. Living in Ireland in the 80s and 90s, my family had access to national teletext service, Aerotel, multiple times a day for weather and news bulletins, as well as things like TV programs guide and updates on airport flight arrivals. It was an elegant system, fast, low bandwidth, unaffected by a user load, and delivering readable text even on analog television screens. So when I recently saw the 40th anniversary of Aerotel's test transmissions, I reactivated the thought had been rolling in my head for years. Could I make a ham radio version of teletext? Interested? Want to know more? Click on the link below. Yeah. So ham radio teletext, teletext piggybacked on digital signals. Interesting stuff. Being able to put that into a ham radio, that might be something we should look at. Just saying, because, You know, as it sits right now, the current World Wide Web seems an awful lot like a pretty sick slave state. I'm just going to throw that out there. It's kind of slavish, slavishly slavish. And for those of us who don't really want to spend the rest of our lives with the mark of the beast, whatever that's going to be, maybe having the ability to stay mobile, accountable, be responsible for your consciousness, don't let other people validate you, living on purpose, you know, these are things that they won't tell you to do, but I'll tell you to do, and hell, I'm trying to do it with you. So come on over to the Discord server, links below, and maybe you can sign up with us and we can figure out what the hell is going on. I mean, if you're showing up there, incidentally, about the Discord server, there's some really good people in there. If you show up in the Discord server and you're expecting everything highly polished, that's not what this is. That is not what this is. We're doing the best we can. We got people over there who are showing up every day, who are making sure that this place is trying to grow as a community, and I deeply, deeply respect them. I've been not spending hardly any time in there at all. To be fair, I do try to get in when I can, but man, you know, it's a lot. It's a lot. I have no real excuses. I don't want to turn this into a like poor me session, but you know, trying to do a bunch of things all at once here and get the show out and work in the new job, which is going well, by the way. So it's something to think about. But thinking of the mark of the beast, well, beasts in general, it seems that the Loch Ness Monster is back in the news. What? An undersea creature that could have come through a portal is back in the news? Why is this happening? Nessie returns. An American man visiting Loch Ness was stunned to discover he had inadvertently captured a footage of an odd anomaly emerging from the water. The intriguing monster sighting reportedly occurred on May 18th as Nicholas Wiegand was riding a tour bus along the shore of famed Scottish site. At the time of the filming, he recalled, we were driving pretty fast rate down the roadway directly next to Loch Ness. Due to time constraints from the tour, Wiegand was unable to look at his video until later in the day when he noticed something extraordinary. After careful review of the footage, I discovered something mysterious and unknown deep in the water quite far from shore. A visible screen captured from the video, Wiegand noted that you can clearly see a dark image of something breaking the water's surface as we drove by. Based on the location of the bus, when we filmed the footage, using road signs on the shore for comparison, the traveler estimated the peculiar anomaly was relatively large. So this stuff keeps happening. You know, they keep seeing these creatures and then they go looking for them and they can't find them. And why is that? Why do these things come and go? Could it be that this relatively closed-off loch has tunnels going to and from it? Or maybe there's some sort of a way that these things are able to move through that area. Maybe there's a thin space there that we don't know about. Maybe, you know, Dolan's idea about USOs, maybe there's something going on with interdimensional mediums traveling through water. This would explain why. We've seen prehistoric sharks, lots of sea monsters. Maybe it's not just limited to the air. Maybe thin spaces are a little easier to occur in the water. I'm just theorizing here, but it seems like shit's been going on at Loch Ness for a long time. And there's probably a reason for that. So why don't we stop playing around and start looking at like, yeah, let's just accept that there's something weird about that region. And rather than trying to find the Loch Ness Monster, we should try to focus on how to harness this to our ability. And maybe don't look for the Loch Ness Monster. Don't see whether or not that's real. Clearly it's real. It's been seen for a long time. Let's focus on where it's going. Now, also, everybody likes to run around right now with GPS. GPSs are great. You know, they're wonderful. You don't really need a map book anymore. You used to be able to buy map books at gas stations for those of you with the same color hair as what I have. You remember those days fondly where you had to look at the book and get the grid square and look it up in the index and go back and forth and get in there. But now we have GPSs. Yes. The GPS looks after you, right? Because you could totally navigate without your GPS. If somebody told you to go somewhere in your city right now and you could do it without the GPS, right? Like if you just turned off your GPS and said, okay, I have to go there. What would be the next step? Any idea? Do you have a map book? Any maps at all? Have any idea how to do that? Probably not. Well, this next story is going to be related to that very much thing, which is when GPS is canceled. So it seems that according allegedly, Russian satellites have been identified as the cause of mysterious seconds-long bursts of GPS interference across Europe. Oh, good. A rare example of human-made GPS interference coming from space. But uncertainty still hangs in the air whether such interference is intentional or if it could be a more powerfully weaponized as GPS jamming with continual reach with continued continental reach in the future, if that's going to be a weapon moving forwards. Discovery came from the investigation of detailed in the June 2nd preprint paper by Todd Humphreys and his student Zach Clements, not Jack Clements, Zach Clements, at the University of Texas in Austin, along with Argyris Crisis at the Stanford University of California. By sifting through public data from ground-based stations with global navigation satellite systems, GNSS receivers, they identified a pattern of high-powered interference lasting less than 10 seconds each time, but simultaneously detectable by ground stations across Europe, from Norway to Spain and Poland, and even reaching as far as Greenland and Canada. So let's extrapolate on that. What does that mean? Well, it probably means that we are going to have a problem with the GPS. So let's get ahead of that. Maybe you should pick up some map books, the old-fashioned kind. You can get them. They're available anywhere. It's fine. They're not going to, the roads are there. You'll be able to see them. Just try to get a more recent one. They still print them. They're still good. Just get one. Just, humor me. It'll cost you $20. Go out, buy a current map book. Put that on the to-do list. Good plan. Having a map book is very, very helpful in case things go badly. And there's a very good chance things could go badly if the GPS goes down, because all the dudes without math books will begin to panic. And you'll need to get on that same said gas-efficient vehicle so you can GTFO right now and make it to a place where everyone's not going to be trying to kill you to get clean water. Okay? I'm just saying, the first 48 hours is going to be really bad. And everybody knows that most modern cities are 3 days away from cannibalism. All right? And some cities more than others. California right now probably, they're probably closer to like 20 minutes away from cannibalism. In fact, some areas of Florida, we hear there's cannibalism going on right now. If you're in Washington, hell, you got a dinner date for it. Because, cannibalism is like a thing there. But I don't mean like the acceptable cannibalism where, they eat migrant kids. I'm talking about like, 28 days later levels of cannibalism. So that's all cannibalism, to be fair. I frown upon it quite heavily. That's sort of a thing that makes me reach for the shovel, really. I'm not a fan of the whole cannibalistic thing. I think that, is evil. So take my sarcasm and tone as it is intended and just make sure that you can have a good way to stay mobile. And that's why I like 2 wheels over 4 wheels, because, everybody else is going to be trying to get away at the same time, and those streets are going to be gridlocked. You're going to need to be able to grab the person that you love and get out of there, or person or people you love, and make like, you're in Vietnam or Thailand, cram the whole family on the bike and make a run for it. All while other people are trying to take your bike. So, pack the appropriate tools is where I'm going with that. Because to not do that would be a bad idea. Which brings us to bad idea news. That's right. This is a little segment I like to put in. These are like things that are just a bad idea. Like this one here, I don't know who thought this up, but fire cleanses oil spills. What? Like, what would clean up an oil spill? What makes an oil spill better? Let's make a fire tornado on it. Yeah, okay. Research have shown that by controlling fire whirls, that's like tilt-a-whirl, those little wind things that you play around with. Not a fire tornado, hell no. But when you look at it, that's what it is. It's a fire tornado. Controlled fire whirls can help clean up oil spills faster and more cleanly than traditional burning methods. Oh, good. The spinning flames consume about 95% of the oil, cut soot emissions by 40%, and help prevent spills from reaching sensitive marine habitats. Researchers have demonstrated a striking new approach that can make this process far more effective. In a first-of-its-kind large-scale study, scientists create giant fire whirls, spinning columns of flame that resemble fire tornadoes, because they are fire tornadoes, and found they burn oil faster and more cleanly than conventional methods, which means they burn hotter, right? The rotating vortex draws in large amounts of oxygen, creating a hotter, more efficient flame. So it's great. That'll probably melt steel. As a result, the fire will consume oil more rapidly while producing significantly less pollution. Now, I don't know. I know at a certain temperature you can actually, water can start to break down into hydrogen and oxygen. So maybe creating a fire tornado that burns exceptionally hot, and hotter the better, so that it burns all the oil off the surface, creating no soot. What if that got out of control? I don't know. It's a crazy thought, but what if it got out of control? What if some of the oil got on shore, right? You see where I'm going with this? And instead of just having some black seabirds, we got chicken fricassee right now, because if it's hot enough to burn oil, without any pollution, that's probably hot enough to incinerate anything that goes near it. Really, guys? Really? Like, This is what we say, what's the word, is a bad idea. So you should be on guard against bad ideas. Make sure that you keep your eyes open and look towards, your own future. And you better start being accountable for it, because right now, trusting anybody else, other than me, of course, I am your only friend. And you need to remember that. In this program, when I'm talking to you, I'm seriously trying to make sure that everything I'm saying to you is kind of common sense. Like, nobody could go on and say, oh, Sean's crazy. Okay, sure, say that. Am I wrong, though? Tell me I'm wrong. Well, what's your evidence? I don't know, years of, documentation of aliens cutting up cows and stealing people's kids. Like, at some point, either they're all lying or there's something going on. And now, would you look at that? Pizzagate's like a real thing now. So, dude, okay, you can't trust anything that's going on in the media. You can only trust the people who are like you, who want to say maybe get to the bottom of these things. And I don't even think we can get to the bottom of it anymore. Okay? So I guess the takeaway from all of this is, remember, everybody, I am your only friend.